In the previous video in this series, we demonstrated how DSI Workbench can pick up test results from the ATEasy Test Executive and, using diagnostic strategies developed in the Express software, identify specific components for repair. In this video, we will look at how DSI Workbench can be used to guide the technician step by step through the manual troubleshooting process in situations where UUT's built-in test capabilities are not sufficient to isolate to a single failed component. By integrating automated and manual testing into a single diagnostic solution, Workbench streamlines both processes, supplementing the information available from automatic test programs and simplifying troubleshooting by taking advantage of information from test equipment. Let's take another look at our HTML demo UUT in DSI Workbench, this time having inserted a fault at the capacitor C1. Notice that in this case, the diagnostic capability afforded by this unit's built-in tests is only able to isolate to a fault group containing 4 components. In other words, given information at test points that have been designed into this unit, the diagnostics can only confidently say that one of these 4 components have failed. Graphically, the components under suspicion can be highlighted in red on any image you wish to display within Workbench, such as a photo of the UUT, a schematic representation of the design, or the graphic representation of the model from Express. The specific functions or failure modes under suspicion are listed in the primary suspects table, which we've currently docked on the left-hand side of the Workbench program window. For each suspected item, this table contains information that can help the technician decide which repair to perform first. Although, by default, the table is sorted in failure probability order, meaning that the most likely failure appears at the top of the list. The table can also be sorted by other useful attributes, such as the repair cost or repair time of each part. Sometimes, however, the technician will need to perform additional manual tests to further isolate the failure. If these manual tests are also included in the Express diagnostic strategy, then DSI Workbench will guide the technician through the troubleshooting process. So, let's look at the same fault group in an Express diagnostic study. On the left, the diagnostic flow diagram indicates how, for this UUT, test results are translated into sets of suspected components. If we click on the fault group that's isolated when a fault is inserted at C1, we can see that this fault group is isolated when test 4.1 fails, yet 6 other tests, shown in green on the diagram, have passed. Like in Workbench, the diagnostic status is displayed on the design drawing on the right. The 4 isolated components are colored red. Now, if we wish to take manual troubleshooting into account, we must extend the diagnostics at this point using manual tests that are only available after the built-in testing has been exhausted. Here we can see that 2 new tests have been introduced. Manual tests that can be used to determine whether one of the 2 resistors isolated in this group has failed. Because in our example, it is the capacitor that is not behaving correctly, both of these resistor checks will pass, resulting in isolation to a fault group containing only the 2 capacitors. Notice that in the generated fault isolation sequence, all automatic tests that can be run by the ATEasy Test Executive, are performed first. It is only when the built-in diagnostic capability can isolate no further that the manual tests are performed. Now, when this diagnostic strategy is loaded into DSI Workbench, the same 4 components are initially highlighted when the test results are uploaded from ATEasy. Now, however, the technician can invoke the guided troubleshooting window, which we'll dock over here on the left. When we start the troubleshooting, Workbench will pick up where the automatic test program left off, prompting the technician to perform the additional manual testing and enter the results. The components that had previously been colored red in the image of the UUT are now colored yellow. Moreover, components that have been partially or fully proven good by the diagnostics will be colored light or dark green. For this example, will indicate that these two manual tests have passed, each of which will exonerate one of the two resistors that were originally isolated for this fault. After the manual tests have been performed, only the two capacitors remain under suspicion. Because no more testing is available, these components will be highlighted in red on the image of the UUT. Once again, the functions or failure modes of these components that are under suspicion are listed in the primary suspects table. As we mentioned in the previous video in this series, Workbench can be set up to include links to test procedures for each manual test and repair procedures for each component under suspicion, thereby providing the technician with all of the help he or she needs to perform the necessary corrective maintenance.